Well, hello, welcome back to another very special episode of The First. So, today we're going to be talking about something very, very special. So, I have something with me, a very, very special cartridge that has some of the first games that I ever played on the Sega Mega Drive. So, today we're going to recap over some of these games. Now, if you've been watching my channel for the longest time, you'll know I'm not somebody that is too well rounded when it comes to sports games. I'm not too good at sports games, but I wasn't bad at this game. So the first game I'm going to show you is. So the first game that I played that was ever a sports game is Sega Soccer, which is a very old football game. Way before I ever played FIFA or PES or any games like that, I played Sega Soccer. Very pixelated, very slow, but I remember I beat like two or three of my friends at this game once or twice. So that's probably my only claim to fame when it comes to a sports game. Now, you guys know I have a lot of love for fighting games. I love Tekken. Tekken is one of my favorite fighting games of all time, and it probably is my favorite fighting game of all time. Then followed by Mortal Kombat, and then if we were gonna go to other consoles, I'd say like Smash. Smash is like a penultimate game. Um, and yeah, there's a Dead or Alive. There's a lot of different fighting games that I've played over the years. You know, Soul Calibur. There's so many different come to mind, and I really love them games. But where did that all start for me? Well, that all started when I used to play a game, and unfortunately, I don't have a cartridge of that anymore, which was Virtual Fighter. Virtual Fighter, there's like now I think it's like Virtual Fighter 5 or something because they did a free PS Plus version that you could get a while back that I actually still have. Also, guys, always download the PS Plus games even if you're not going to play them essentially at that moment in time. Because of that, I've ended up with a library of so many games that I can play that I can go back and replay. Um, Virtual Fighter was like the penultimate fighting game for me because that was like one of the very first fighting games I ever played. I loved that game. I've still got so much time for that game. And I even play the new one, Virtual Fighter 5, from time to time. But I think we should get on to talking about a different type of game that I used to play a lot. So the next game I wanted to talk about is this one just here, The Streets of Rage. Now, currently, you can play the Streets of Rage 4, which is the latest Streets of Rage game, which is currently still available. You can play that on the PS4, the PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X. I believe you can also play it on the PC as well. And you can play it on the Nintendo Switch. The Streets of Rage is one of my penultimate platforming games. That and Batman and Robin are probably two of my favorite like platforming games from my childhood. Streets of Rage is a game where you can play with up to like I believe 4 people in total. I always used to play as Axel. There's a few different characters that you can play as, and it's very self-explanatory. The streets are full of rage, and you've got to go and sort them out. You have different special abilities. There's team. You can like play team objectives in that where you're playing with other people. You know, you can all like cover each other when each people's health is low. It's just a really great game. Very pixelated, of course, because of the time, but it was just so fun. I loved the music of it as well. The sound effects, the music, the visual art style. Just, I could play that game at any moment in time, and it doesn't bother me about the graphics in any way at all because I've got nostalgia goggles on for that game. So when they released Streets of Rage 4, and I was a bit skeptical about it, and I had a couple people say to me, "Oh, buy it, don't buy it," da da da. And then when I finally did buy it, it definitely was worth my time. So Streets of Rage is a great game, very easy, very simplistic. It can get hard, obviously, if you put it into its harder modes. There's several different levels for it, boss fights that you can do, little extra modes where you can like smash up cars and all cool stuff like that. And yeah, it's just a really fun game. It can be played by all different ages as well. So if you want to have a fun game where like you could play essentially with younger people in your family or your children or whatever it may be, Streets of Rage. Check out Streets of Rage. Absolutely amazing Sega Mega Drive game. Got so much time for it. And it's such a popular game, as I said, all these years later, they then decided to make a newer version of the game. Why? Because they knew the popularity of that game would drive people into buying it. So Streets of Rage gets a 10 out of 10 from me each and every single time. But now we're going to move on to a cult classic. Probably my first introduction to a stealth game. And I think we all know what that's going to be. Revenge of Shinobi. If you have not played Revenge of Shinobi or Shinobi, boy, you're missing out. Stealth type game where you play as a ninja, you can throw ninja stars, you have to dodge obstacles, defeat other ninjas. Really cool game. And it's a game that I didn't know that I needed until I started playing it as a kid. And I guess it was what kind of took me down the rabbit hole of looking into Western culture and Eastern culture and all different types of culture. This Revenge of Shinobi kind of led me on to looking into mangas and animes as a kid. Just was tantalized by the music, the art style, the feel of the game. Being a ninja, that was just something different for me. The only other game that I played where you got to be a ninja was another Mega Drive game, which I think was called Zumi or Zombie, where you got to play as a sweet ninja, which was like a very child type like game. I'm not saying Revenge of Shinobi was like a very bloody type game, because they couldn't really express that in them sort of games due to like the limitations of the hardware. But it was more of an adult type game due to the story, the lore and everything that was going on. And I've got a lot of time, and that game led me into playing stuff like Metal Gear and other espionage type spy games. And, I can see a lot of games that were probably inspired by it, like, Dishonored and so on and so forth. But yeah, Revenge of Shinobi, guys, check that out. And if you can play it on the original Sega Mega Drive, do so, because the nostalgia feeling of it, maybe it's because like my age, it gives me chills each and every single time. But I think we're gonna have to talk about another game for today, another game which pretty much was my first F1 game. And yes, as you guys know, when it comes to racing games, you give me a racing game where we got gears, I'm not gonna do too well. So the game I wanted to talk about today is none other than Super Monaco GP. So Super Monaco Grand Prix was the original racing game that I played. I think after that I played like Ridge Racer. What else did I play? I played something on the Atari. One of my cousins had an Atari. I can't remember what racing game it was, but very limited controls. But the first racing game where I tried, like as a kid, thinking I was some sort of like race star, was Super Monaco GP. I was terrible at that game, but I tried, more than anything. That was the thing, like we didn't have the internet back then, and I got bought this compilation cartridge. So pretty much all my games was everything on here. I only got to play other games if like a friend came around and brung a cartridge and they had different games and stuff. But this, for back in the day, like, do you know 6 games on one cartridge back in the day was just like, what? The amount of people that would try and borrow this off me and ask, I was like, nah, this is never leaving my side, mate. But yeah, Super Monaco GP, I was absolutely terrible at Super Monaco GP, but I tried. And I guess that's what led me on to playing other racing games, Crash Team Racing, Mario Kart. What have I tried to play? Need for Speed is probably one of my favorite racing games. Midnight Club, that's another great racing game. And I reckon a lot of them were probably inspired by older titles like this. But I think this probably inspired like GP games or GT games or like Gran Turismo and stuff like that, because this is like track-based racing. But still, a great game, and it's a good piece of gaming history. So we move on to 2 of my favorite games now. So, Columns. Columns was basically Sega's equivalent to Tetris. There's been many games in the future that have become clone versions of the same game, and that essentially what Columns was. So if you've ever played Tetris, then you know the basis of Tetris. You have to line, you have to basically create lines. Every time you create a line, you get rid of that line, and what you've got to try and do is not get blocked up by all these different pieces of blocks. You have to fit them into the correct order. It's actually good for muscle memory and equation solving as well. And I've seen a poll recently as well saying that gamers' brains are more active due to like all the different situations and scenarios that they have to do with puzzles, games, simulation type games, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that game for me, Columns, was my first introduction to all of them types of games, like Bust a Move, Free Bubble Pop, All of them Facebook-esque type games probably came from Columns and similar games like Mahjong and stuff like that. But Columns was my first kind of introduction to Tetris. And last but not least, we're going to talk about my favorite game that's on this cartridge that you guys have already seen by look at it. You can see it right there, Sonic 1. Sonic 1 is a fantastic game. Sonic 1 is one of those games that I can play at any moment in time. Sonic 1 is one of those games that the music, the vibe, the gameplay, how it runs, the fluidity of the levels, it was a great game. You know, Sonic was a game that was based on speed, collecting rings, defeating Eggman, and freeing the inhabitants of the world. Very fun, light-hearted game that's been enjoyed by many, many different people of all different types and walks of life from all different ages. And it just tells you how popular Sonic is. You know, Sonic recently had his own film with Jim Carrey. He's had so many games, so many series, so many shows, so many different toys, so many different iterations of Sonic, you know, from mobile games to console games to like old school retro type platforms. Sonic the Hedgehog is probably, I would say, rivaling Mario as their mascot. Now, I know it's obviously a Sega owned property, but if you think of Nintendo, the three powerhouses that will always come to mind for me personally is always going to be Mario, Zelda, and Sonic. And Sonic the Hedgehog is just a great character. You know, he's got a good. I just like the character, really. There's not really any version of Sonic that I've never liked. The only Sonic game I wasn't too fond of was Sonic 2000. It's either 2009 or 2006, where the art style was a bit strange. But the thing is, I like different iterations of Sonic. You know, I used to even watch the show as a kid at one point. So yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog to me always means something. Like I still play Sonic Mania, I still play Sonic Forces. What's other Sonic games have I got? Sonic DX. And I've actually got Sonic 1, Sonic Hedgehog 1, Sonic Hedgehog 2, and Sonic and Knuckles on my DS. So these games do not evade me, trust me. A lot of these games I'm still technically playing because Streets of Rage, okay, I'm playing a newer version of Streets of Rage. I now play Streets of Rage 4. Sonic the Hedgehog, as I said, I play through many different Sonic the Hedgehog games quite frequently. Shinobi, obviously I don't play Shinobi anymore, but I play a lot of espionage type games because of Shinobi. Columns to me is like any sort of puzzle-based 3-pop move tiles type game for me. So this cartridge kind of inspired a lot of the games that I ended up playing later in life. So big shout out to Mega Drive and, you know, their amazing product that they created underneath Sega. Shout out to you guys for watching. Thank you all for watching another episode of JNG News. That was me showing you my 6-in-1 Mega Drive cartridge and just showing you some of the old original Sega games that I played back in the day. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a like on the video. I've been GMG News. You guys have been my lovely audience. I will see you all soon. Have a good day. Don't forget to subscribe.